Hi, it's Sherri from A Quilting Life, and I'm here today to talk about my new Shine Remix quilt pattern with our Laguna Sunrise fabrics. Now, if it looks a little bit familiar, that is because I did have a Shine pattern, one of my very first patterns when I started writing and designing patterns. But this one has 3 different quilts included, so I'm excited to tell you all about it today and show you all of the different little details about this quilt. Let's go ahead and get started. Okay, as I mentioned, this Shine Remix is also a throwback to one of my very earliest quilt patterns. In fact, it was my 5th quilt pattern that was called Shine, and I have always wanted to remake it in one of our fabric collections. A little bit after I did that pattern, I also did a Shine Mini. And so when I decided to redo this, I thought I'm going to include the mini in the pattern for you as well. And I also have a third option for you, an even bigger quilt. So in the Shine Remix pattern, you will get the directions for the mini quilt, for the quilt on the table, which is 63 inches by 76.5, and also a nice bed-sized quilt at 76.5 inches by 90. So when I bring those patterns back, I feel like I need to offer some size options. And it is in booklet format now, and I'm really much happier with the diagrams and everything. So just really was fun to update this pattern. Let me show you a few things about the quilts here. So the mini, this is I just can't wait to get this up on the wall in my sewing room. The blocks are tiny and cute. And I did alternate different low volume prints from Laguna Sunrise for the little center sections of the blocks. Just kind of gives a little sparkle. You'll see on the big quilt, though, I used a gray print for all of those areas. But I really think this busier floral would have been really cute in the larger quilt too. So don't feel like you have to go with a darker gray. I feel like one of the low volume florals would look really good in there. And I just kind of mixed and matched, you know, I used 2 different prints, but I just kind of sprinkled them throughout the quilt for those little centers. This one, both of these quilts were actually quilted by my friend Val Krieger with Custom Quilting. For this one, the aqua, I felt like I was just drawn to using this for borders a lot with this collection. And then the small white flowers on red just made a perfect binding. I actually did use, this is one of my favorite prints from the collection too. I feel like it looks like a sand dollar, and use that for the backing. And just wanted to point out that I am going to hang this on the wall with a dowel. And so I did my little charm pack pockets. We actually have a video. And I just take a charm square and I press it in half, wrong sides together, and I put it on the back of my quilt before I sew the binding on. So then when the quilt is bound, the pockets to hold the dowel are already there. And then you can just rest the dowel on a couple of nails. Or you can even get command hooks and use those if you have a small enough dowel. The large quilt, again, you know, I talked about how I did something a little bit different with the center there. Let me share the backing, which is also the sand dollar. And I just thought it was, you know, I thought it looks really pretty with the red, but I also love it with the teal in this collection. So just so many options for backings and binding. And then the border, I went with the busy floral on the darker teal, and then just love how these two work together too. So a couple of things about this pattern that I wanted to mention as well. The pattern is written for fat quarters, and the mini quilt is actually written for fat eighths. And you could probably make the mini, well, you could definitely make the mini with your leftover fabrics from either one of the 2 bigger quilts if you're using fat quarters. When I made this medium-sized quilt, the throw, I actually was able to get it from fat eighths. but it's really tight. So I wrote the pattern for fat quarters because I actually did make a mistake on one of my blocks when I was cutting and had to go get extra fabric. So there is no room for error if you try to use fat eighths, but it will work if you're very diligent about careful cutting. But the pattern is written for fat quarters. And you can mix and match and add in your scraps. I feel like something else you could do is, if you didn't want to get a fat quarter bundle for this medium size, you could get a charm pack to use for your block centers, and then you'd be really good with your fat eighths. You'd not have to worry so much like I did when I was cutting. So again, all 3 quilts are included in the pattern, and the patterns are available now in paper and PDF. Okay, so that's it for the Shine Remix pattern, which includes the mini quilt, the lap quilt, and the twin size bed quilt. All of the details on the patterns are linked in the description below. If you enjoyed today's video, please share it with a friend, hit the like button, and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. Thanks so much for stopping by.